Hello, friends. Welcome back to the channel. I have a really special episode that I'm excited to share with you today. This interview actually means a lot to me because I had the chance to speak with my friend, Sara Horn. Now, I actually met Sara through my YouTube channel. She was one of the first people who began consistently commenting on my videos back when I first started. And she was constantly leaving these comments that were just filled with so much wisdom that it would blow my mind. And come to find out, as time went on, we really connected because we have similar backgrounds of being raised in Christianity and coming to an understanding of universal reconciliation, from that progressing into some things like A Course in Miracles. So we have a lot in common, and we've sort of just been talking and sharing with each other off and on along the way. And one day I said, Sara, you should come on the channel and you should share your story. So she's here with us today to share her story of being raised in Christianity and sort of starting to question that and come out of that. The thing that I love about Sara is her absolutely beautiful worldview that she has now, the relationship that she has with God, the way that she views Jesus. It is a constant inspiration to me. And we're going to talk about all of these things. So just a little bit of background on Sara. She is a musician. She composes absolutely beautiful music. I will have her music linked in the description. You can find it on Spotify, on Amazon, I believe. So be sure to check that out. If you want to look her up, she goes by Sara Horn on Facebook, but her artist name is Sara Piper. So if you're looking for her music, look for Sara Piper, and she's also Sara Piper on YouTube. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm so excited about this episode. Here's Sara. Hi, Sara. Welcome to the channel. Thank you so much for being willing to have this conversation with me. I'm really excited to talk to you about your story with Christianity and deconstructing and where you are now. So welcome.
Thank you so much for having me on your channel, Melissa. As you know, I've been watching your videos for the past couple of years, and they've been so helpful for me. I'm just really happy to have the opportunity to be a part of what you're doing here on your channel.
Well, thank you. And as we've talked before, we connected early on. I want to say like 2 years ago, because you were one of the first people who was regularly commenting on my videos, and you've been just as much of an encouragement to me. So I'm really excited to have you on. Would you like to start by just sharing whatever you're comfortable sharing about your background, how you were raised and what you were taught, and then how you sort of started to question that?
Sure. So my background is in the Lutheran Church from the time I was about 3 or 4 years old. And I didn't tell you this earlier, but I also went to the Lutheran school that was connected with that church. So that was kindergarten through 8th grade. So in addition to our regular school subjects, we had religion classes. We had confirmation classes in 7th and 8th grade, where you had to memorize sections of the Lutheran catechism. And we had church services for the kids in the middle of the week. So I was really thoroughly churched as a kid. And so the doctrine that they taught really, really sunk in, went really deep for me. And church doctrine is always kind of it's like a big puzzle of all of these different pieces that kind of fit together, or they're jammed together to make them fit. And so I don't want to try to get into, all of that, but the main points that I remember was that it was just all focused on sin and forgiveness of sin, and kind of equal focus on each. So every week, we would talk about how you're a sinner and there is nothing that you can do to please God. You're unworthy of God's love or forgiveness or anything good. And basically what you deserve is eternal punishment. And I remember hearing that from a really young age and knowing exactly what it meant and really taking it to heart and having that really impact my self-image and my self-worth. So anyway, on the flip side of that, after we go through you're a poor, miserable sinner deserving of eternal punishment, then we would get the good news that because of what Jesus did on the cross, you're saved. Saved from eternal punishment, saved from your punishment from sin to heaven. So it was definitely taught that came through Jesus' sacrifice, that the animal sacrifices in the Old Testament were needed by God in order for him to be able to forgive us. And that since the animal sacrifices were not perfect somehow or weren't satisfactory, that the perfect sacrifice of Jesus was the one, like the once for all, that you had to choose to believe in that sacrifice on your behalf, and then you would be saved. So it's kind of like salvation is a free gift, but you have to choose to take that gift. And if you don't, believe in the way that we're teaching you about the death of Jesus, then you're not accepting that gift. So yeah, that's basically the background I came out of. And I just wanted to kind of give a disclaimer that I've heard you say the same thing before, which is that I do not have any negative feelings against, the pastors and the teachers who were teaching this doctrine, because I know that they were just, they were kind-hearted people and they were just teaching what they believed to the best of their ability. So even though I don't agree with really any of that now, I don't blame the people. It's just the doctrine that needs to be changed.
I really love that. Thank you for mentioning that. I think it's so important. And that's part of the reason I wanted to have you on, because you have such a positive outcome to your story and the way that you view everything now.
Yeah, there was kind of some steps along the way. I did, as an adult, bring my children. My husband and I raised our children in a church that was more focused on the teachings of Jesus, which it kind of got lost in the church that I grew up in because there was so much focus on sin and forgiveness of sin. But we found a church that really focused on God's love for us and on loving each other. And so that's thankfully where our children were raised. But it still didn't really address the things that had been taught to me in the first church. It just kind of glossed over. So just no talk about hell at all. So what really changed my beliefs, and this story is on your Facebook discussion group too. I'm going to try not to talk too long about it. But I watched a movie on Netflix called Come Sunday, and it was a true story of a pastor who had come to believe in universal salvation. And he actually lost his big mega church because of that, because he was preaching that from the pulpit. But anyway, that was the first that I'd ever heard that you could be a Christian, that you could follow Jesus, and you didn't have to believe in eternal punishment. There were people who believed that everyone would be saved somehow. So as soon as I, heard that, I started looking into it, researched a little bit, and found that Christian Universalism was an actual denomination. And then I took it straight to God and just asked. And I've heard a lot of other people say the same thing, that the way they came to this realization is by just asking God for the truth. And I prayed, God, I need to know if your love, like I understand love, not like a your ways are higher than our ways, which is a verse that was often used to explain why God is just incomprehensible to us. I needed to know if God was the kind of love like I have for my kids, where, you know, I would never be okay if any of my children were suffering forever and there was nothing I could do to get to them or help them. I could never be at peace with that. So that's what I was asking. God, are you love like I love my kids? And that would mean that no one would be lost to a place of eternal suffering forever. And then I asked just that God would remove any wrong beliefs, anything, no matter if it was what I wanted or not. I wanted the truth. I just asked him to remove everything that I had believed that was false and give me the truth, even if it was what I did not want to hear. And so I was pacing around my room, kind of in figure eights and looking down at the floor, just pouring my heart out. And when I finally kind of came to a stop, and I just said, I need to know the answer to this right now, you know, in a definitive way that I can't argue with, I can't doubt. Just please tell me the answer to this question. And I said, I don't know how you're going to do it. In Jesus' name, amen. And I looked up. I don't know if my eyes were closed or I was just looking down, but there was a literal sign in front of my face, just this close, eye level, that said, God is love. It was on a bookshelf in my room. And I didn't know it was there because it had belonged to my husband, and we're a blended family. So we both brought our stuff into this house. And that was a thing that I just had not noticed. I had no idea. That was the beginning of my beliefs starting to change. And then I did ask for several more signs after that. And I won't take the time to go into those, but every single thing that I asked for, God answered me with exactly the sign that I had asked for until I just stopped asking.
Wow, what an amazing story. I can just imagine how you felt in that moment when you looked up and saw that sign.
Yeah, I literally fell on my bed, and I was kind of laughing, kind of crying at the same time. And I just said, God, can you really save everyone? And before I had finished the thought was interrupted with, of course I can.
Wow.
And it was almost impatient, like God had just been waiting for me to really ask and be ready for that. And then there it was instantly.
You've had quite a journey since then, coming from that point of realizing, yes, God is love and God can save everyone, to where you are now. Do you have any advice for people who are on this journey? Because it can be really isolating and really difficult in a lot of ways.
I would say to look, of course, if they're watching this video, they may have already done this, but look for groups online and videos like what you're putting out there so that they don't feel so alone. I think that communication with other people who have gone through, you know, a similar experience is so important. Growing up, you know, the only way that I heard anything about God was from the pulpit. There just wasn't this kind of information out there. So yeah, I think just communication with other like-minded people. And then, you know, for any questions that we still have, because we all still have questions and we're all still learning, just go straight to God. Just go to the source and ask. And as you've pointed out so many times, that source is within us. God is within us. We need to trust ourselves that when we hear something or read something and it resonates with us as this is true, or it's almost like remembering it, then we need to trust that and know that God is within us. which is, I think a really different way of approaching things than just looking to a book to give you all the answers.
And I've seen you mention that a couple times in the Facebook group as well. Just telling people when they'll ask questions, just go to God and ask him directly and listen for the answers within yourself. And it can be so hard for us to do that when we're programmed not to trust ourselves. Actually, this is another thing that you and I talked about before, about the low self-esteem that
Yes.
those religious beliefs will sometimes instill into us as children. What's been your experience with getting free from that?
Yeah, I think that, being taught that we're just completely unworthy of God's love and presence, that is so not true, that in fact, the exact opposite is true, that we actually have the Spirit of God in us from birth. Our souls, I believe, are breathed out, like it says in Genesis, God breathed into Adam or humanity the breath of life. So our spirits are divine, and we're literally children of God. And I think, when we understand that, nothing can actually take away your worth. Nothing you do, nothing anybody says to you. And it's the same with nothing you can do will please God. It's almost that the opposite is true. There's nothing that you can do that's going to make God not love you anymore. And I think, I may be jumping ahead with your questions, but that's what Jesus showed on the cross, is that there is nothing you can do that God can't forgive. He forgave his murderers while he was nailed to the cross.
Wow, that is such a good point. And I actually never thought about that before, that we were taught you can't do anything to please God, but the opposite is actually true. And when I had my spiritual experience, this is one of the number one things that was impressed on me there, and that I came back with, is that there's nothing I can do to displease God. He loves me unconditionally, and he loves all of us like we were his, like we love our children.
Yes, exactly. And that is so important, I think, to understand that God is our parent. God is the best mom and the best dad that we could imagine. And it's not some other completely different kind of love that we can't comprehend. It's the same love, it's just magnified.
You mentioned Jesus on the cross, so let's talk about Jesus. What is your view of Jesus now?
I've been thinking about that question and watched your video on it the other day, and it is just such a huge question.
Yeah.
There's just so much, and I can't wait to meet him someday and find out the full answer to that. But what I believe now is that Jesus is the message of God to the world. As it says in, I think, the beginning of the book of John, he was the Word. The Word was with God, and the Word was God. And so it's what God spoke into being through. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It totally makes sense.
I feel like the Word in that context means God's intention, God's will, God's plan, and the emotion behind it. So everything was created through that intention and plan, and you could call that Christ. And so everything was created through Christ and for Christ. And that plan and that intention, I believe, was for God to share existence, to share life, and so that there would be connection. In other words, love. Love is, I think, the closest word that we have. And I believe that everything was created through that intention or that spirit that you could call Christ, but Jesus embodied that. Like, he was that message. He taught it, he lived it. Everything he did showed us the love of God and who God is. And that God only heals, never harms, only forgives, doesn't hold sins against us, but just forgives unconditionally, without asking what religion a person is or what their background is. He just forgave everyone. And that shows us what God is like, which I think was part of the message that Jesus brought, but it also shows us where we came from and what we're growing into. So he's showing us, I think, like the full completed human soul. This is where we're all headed. So he's the beginning and he's the end. He's the firstborn of a new creation. But we can look at Jesus and see, not only is this where we came from, but this is what we're all becoming.
Wow, that may be the most profound explanation I have ever heard. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Wow, you just really have a way with putting things into words. That was beautiful.
I was just thinking of a Christian song that I don't know if you've heard. I don't listen to Christian music that much anymore, but there was one that we used to do at the church that I went to most recently called Love Has a Name.
Yes.
And
yes,
it's just, yeah, love has a name, Jesus. And it's so simple, but that's what I believe, is that he's just showing us this is the perfect love of God. And that really the key to it is forgiveness. And it's forgiveness of ourselves, and it's forgiveness for everyone else. And that's what unconditional love does, is just forgives all. And it's the hardest thing to do, but that's what I think Jesus meant by I'm the way, the truth, and the life. The only way for the world and for our own souls to ever be healed and made whole or saved is through forgiveness. And I think that's what the main point that I got from reading A Course in Miracles is, that forgiveness is the way that the world is saved.
So that's what Jesus meant. I am the way, the truth, and the life, because he did go around forgiving people's sins. And obviously when he was on the cross, he forgave his murderers. And so what he was saying is forgiveness is the way to heal the world. That makes so much sense.
Yeah. And it's, to me, forgiveness and love are, you can't even really separate. Unconditional love and forgiveness, or if you want to call it non-judgment, it's the same thing.
Do you have any specific books or resources that have helped you?
Sure. So many books. You're going to be sorry you asked me this question. Right about the same time that I came to a belief in the restoration of all things, I also got hit with chronic fatigue syndrome out of a flu bug that I had had. So I was literally flat on my back and unable to get off the couch or out of the bed for a good long time. And I read so many books during that time. So it was interesting how that coincided. But anyway, the first few books I read were Love Wins by Rob Bell. And that's a good one for when you're kind of just starting to, look at something different from the church doctrine that you were taught. It's very logical, just logical arguments. Julie Forwerda's Raising Hell is a good one for really looking at the Bible and finding the restoration of all things throughout the Bible, and also looking at, where did the idea of an eternal hell come in to the Bible? How did that happen? Richard Rohr, Universal Christ. Along the same lines, Dave Carringer's Born from Above is a beautiful book about Jesus's conversation with Nicodemus, and how he's actually telling him that we're all born from above, spirit born of spirit, and that he wouldn't be able to see the kingdom if that were not the case. And it's not the spin that we normally get on that conversation. That's a very, very good book. Highly recommend it. And then George MacDonald's Unspoken Sermons. I love that. He wrote in the late 1800s, so the language is a little bit, well, you have to read it slowly, but it is beautiful.
All right, well, just a couple more questions. What do you think is the most important insight that you've gained on this journey?
I think probably the most important would be that, and I already said this a little bit earlier, but that we're actually literally God's children, that we are spirit born of spirit, and I think it's the Nicene Creed says about Jesus being of one substance with the Father, by whom all things were made. And that's us too. We're one substance with the Father and the Mother, by whom all things were made. And that doesn't mean, people always say, oh, you're saying you're God. No, not saying that one human soul is the totality of God, but we are God's children and our souls are divine in that sense. And so, learning that has been the biggest help to me to realize not only my own self-worth, but the value of every single human soul. And you really start to look at things much differently.
Is there anything else that you would like to share?
Yeah, I think I would like to share something that I talked with you a little bit about before, but this was something that I didn't expect. When I prayed the prayer, God, show me who you really are, want to know the truth of who you really are, I didn't expect to hear anything about gender, about the way that we always refer to God as Father and always use the male pronouns and male images. And I certainly don't want to, judge anyone who feels comfortable calling God Father. Jesus did. There's nothing at all wrong with that. But for me personally, it's been really good to realize that God is our Heavenly Mother as well. And that, as a female, we're created in the image of God just as much as a male. And I think the reason why this is important is because of our own ideas about the attributes of a dad versus the attributes of a mom. We tend to think, at least I do, of a mom as being maybe more compassionate, more nurturing, more emotionally connected to the children. I know I'm stereotyping, but that's kind of what I'm saying. We all do that. We all stereotype our image of a mom versus our image of a dad. And if we only see God as half of those attributes, then we are missing the other half. And I think if we saw God more as a mom than what we tend to do, it would be harder to see God as vengeful and wanting to destroy the wicked and coming back for a day of vengeance on her children, right? That just sounds kind of ridiculous when you put it that way. Like, of course, a mother wouldn't come back for a day of vengeance on her children. That's been something, like I said, that I didn't expect, but now sometimes I just call God Mom when I'm talking to her, and I feel like God appreciates that, to be acknowledged fully as is having all the attributes of the best mother and the best father.
Well, let's switch gears here and let's talk about your music. So you compose beautiful music, which will be linked in the description. So would you like to share a little bit about that and where people can find your music?
Sure, and thank you so much for doing that, for posting the links for me and helping me get the music out there. The album is called What the Storm Leaves Behind, and it's a solo piano album. And it's just a collection of songs that I have written throughout my life. I started playing piano really young, so the oldest songs on there are actually all the way back to middle school. And then the most recent are within the past couple of years. So throughout that time, whatever I could, remember enough to get it recorded, I recorded it with the help of my brother, who did all of the audio engineering. So I just want to say thanks, Matt, for that. Yeah, so it can be found on Amazon, Spotify, any of the online platforms. And I also did order a few physical copies if anyone wanted to contact me for one of those.
Where's the best place to contact you?
You can message me on Facebook. Look me up under Sara Horn, not Sarah Piper. Sara Piper is kind of my artist name. It was my maiden name, but Sara Horn is what you want to look me up under for Facebook.
All right, and I'll have that linked in the description if you're okay with that. Thank you so much, Sara. This has been a wonderful conversation, and I've learned so much from listening to you talk about Jesus and just share your journey. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me, Melissa.